Today, we are going to talk about something that is very special in China. It is the population, and more specifically, this something that happened last year, a population shrinkage. Population shrinkage. Maybe, Cherry, I'm just curious, like how would you say, the population is getting smaller, or the population got smaller, or something like this?
有好几种说法，你可以说人口减少了，你也可以说人口缩小了，就是人口的数量缩小了，人口减少了。但是大部分人还是会说，今年人口减少的特别厉害。
Mm. So I think let's just take the word like 人口, right? Population 人口. And so something's been happening. I've been reading a lot of articles recently, and hunting for ideas and topics and questions to ask Cherry. And I feel like recently the topics have been too simple for Cherry. And she's pretty clever, and so she's never surprised and by what I ask her. And we have to challenge Cherry a little bit more. So these questions are going to push her brain, her Chinese brain, a little bit further. So I was reading an article about China's population, and I won't say which news company I got this from, but they're a pretty big deal. China's population last year, for the first time in a long time, went down. So what that means is there were actually more people that passed away than babies that were born, right? So that's a very unusual, almost kind of monumental thing that's happened last year. And I wanted to let's fire a question at Cherry and see what she thinks. Like, Cherry, was this related to COVID? Did COVID have some influence on this population change, or was this always going to happen?
嗯，好，在回答你这个问题之前呢，我要先说，我不是很聪明，我说的话也不一定全是对的，只是我自己的感觉，所以我的话不一定是对的啊。然后你刚刚问我说，人口减少跟 COVID 有没有关系？其实我觉得人口减少它可能跟 COVID 有一点儿关系，但是不是 COVID 不是它的全部原因。不是所有的原因都是 COVID。我觉得经济是一个原因，第二个是我们的社会的情况也是一个原因，还有一个是历史。历史，比如说，一直以来都是一个孩子的家庭，现在也会，这个也是人口减少的一个原因。所以我觉得 COVID 只是很多原因里面的一个，不是最大的那个原因。
Yep. Okay. So Cherry's saying COVID is just a small part, but there are many reasons. COVID is just one reason. And she actually mentioned some. She said one was history, and she said she just mentioned briefly the like one child policy, right?
嗯哼。
In Chinese, the one child policy is
我们说独生子女政策。
um, so she mentioned history. She also mentioned the economy. I think the financial situation. And there was something else. I can't remember what it was.
我说的是差不多是这几个情况，我自己可以想到的经济情况，历史情况，还有 COVID 也是一个情况。当然，我觉得还有就是大家的想法，就是大家的脑子里面可能觉得男生比女生重要，儿子比女儿重要，也是一个很小的原因。
Let's jump to a second question here. And this is a quote, actually, that I want to read from the article. They were interviewing a Chinese guy. He said, only people with stable jobs, such as government jobs and teachers, can afford to start a family. Do you agree with this, Cherry?
我很同意这句话。如果是0到100的话，我可能80%同意这句话。就是说，只有稳定的生活和工作，你才养得起孩子。如果生活不稳定， 你都没有办法照顾一个孩子。因为现在在中国养孩子很花钱，我觉得不是在中国，在全世界养孩子都很贵吧。你要养一个孩子，怎么也要花100万、200万去照顾他，给他买吃的、买穿的，给他交学费，让他学很多东西，学弹钢琴、学小提琴、学各种东西。所以我觉得养孩子是很贵的一件事情。
Yeah, I think this is not just in China, right? This is for the whole world. But I think what people maybe don't realize, something that I've thought about, is that yes, it's very expensive to have children in China, but I think it's a little bit more expensive in China because you had that one child policy that was around for a long time. So what has actually happened is a lot of the systems in the country, a lot of the programs, a lot of the money, a lot of the prices of things have come to reflect this fact, this nature of people having mostly only one child. And so the schooling system has become kind of specialized in looking after families with one child, and the prices have all followed that kind of trend. So this is it's kind of reached like like almost a critical level, I think, in a way. Um, that kind of makes it unfair to compare with other countries, I think, because at least from my understanding, no other countries have had a one-child policy on this scale like China has, and so you would expect that the systems inside of the country have changed because of that. And then suddenly, when you want to have more kids, it's much more difficult because the systems need to change. Anyway, so I'm going to jump to question 3. The world average number of babies per woman is 2, around 2. Okay, 2 babies per woman. China has a number that is below this, even though you can have 2 kids now. Actually, I think you can have 3 kids in China now. The average number of babies women are having is still quite a lot lower than the world average, which is 2. So, like, do you have any ways, let's say you want to increase the number of babies, you want people to have more babies. How can you convince people to do this, Cherry? Do you have any ideas for this?
我觉得劝人生孩子是一件很不负责任的事情，因为他生那个孩子，他要负责，你只是劝他生孩子，你又不负责，所以我觉得，我不会去劝一个人生孩子。对于一个国家来说，怎么样去让这个国家的人多生孩子，我觉得国家也没有办法，只能说这个国家它第一，它的经济应该很好。他的经济可以让你去养这么多孩子。第二就是我觉得还有一个很有意思的是，我最近看了一个新闻，就是在韩国，在韩国有很多地方呢，他们是说不可以带小孩子去，比如说去一个咖啡店，他们会贴 no child place，所以现在韩国就是生孩子的那个数据已经很低了，所以我觉得如果一个社会他希望大家多生孩子的话，他们应该有更多的去照顾孩子的地方。比如说，这个政府它会有照顾女人的一些办法，然后也有帮你照顾小孩子的一些办法，这样大家才会生孩子。那你像韩国，大部分的地方都不让你带孩子进，那谁想生孩子？比如说，我想去 KTV，但是他们都不让我带我的孩子去 KTV，那我生了孩子，我就都不能去唱歌了吗？是不是？所以我觉得，这个社会要友好一点的话，大家应该都愿意生孩子。
Let me just summarize what Cherry said. So she's talking about you need to have lots of places kids can go. And she referenced South Korea, and she said some cafes or maybe some restaurants or something have like a no child policy. So if things like that are happening, then you're sort of in trouble. And she's saying you need places where your children can be looked after, maybe lots of these kinds of places. That's very important. I think that's a good point. Yeah, you need the services and the systems to be helping with this process, especially kids, when they're younger, I imagine. I haven't had kids, by the way. I don't have kids. So this is it's a tricky question. Personally, I don't think I could give any good suggestions to this question. And you said like it's pretty hard for like a country to convince people
Mm-hmm.
to have kids, to have like there's you can't really say anything. There's nothing you can really say,
Mm-hmm.
but you could provide incentives, you know. And so, in talking about incentives, this brings us to the fourth part, the fourth question here. So, here in New Zealand, we have some interesting incentives. One of the incentives, if you have a child, I believe you get given some money. I won't tell you how much money, but you get a decent amount of money. And I've also heard some parents tell me that they can get some money towards helping to pay for their child in daycare or in kindergarten, for example, right? In these early childhood places where they look after kids. So my question to you is giving people money to have kids, is this a good incentive?
嗯，我听到你这个问题的第一个想法是，哎，这个想法还挺好的，这样可以帮助父母有更多的钱去照顾孩子。但是我第二个想法，我想不对，如果你不控制，如果你生一个孩子，政府可以给你很多钱的话，那这会不会变成一个 business？会不会变成一个生意？对啊，就是如果有的人他不想工作，他就一直生孩子，一直生孩子，政府就会一直给他钱，一直给他钱。那这样的话，他就会有更多的孩子。但是这样的父母，我觉得是不太负责任的父母。所以我觉得政府他可以给人钱，就是给家庭钱生孩子，但是我觉得他应该就是控制那个钱的多和少。你不能给太多，不能让大家觉得，哎，这个钱可以让我不工作了，那我就多生孩子。我觉得他们应该控制，但是我觉得，如果政府可以把钱拿给那些幼儿园，然后让幼儿园帮助父母照顾孩子，这样会更好。所以我更赞同政府把钱给幼儿园，给一些可以照顾孩子的地方，而不是给父母钱。
Let me translate some of this stuff. Basically, Cherry's talking about um, I think Cherry did a really good job. She sounds like a child support worker. She's got all the ideas. She was saying, what happens if people abuse the system? Sounds like people could make money doing this, and so they just have more kids and lots of kids, which is kind of what you want, but maybe you don't want those kinds of people having lots of kids is for the wrong reason. So it could become a business, she said. And then she said it's good that, you know, these early childhood schools and centers are getting money, being subsidized. That's much better maybe than just paying money directly to people, and people can abuse that kind of system. So I think what we'll do is let's go to the last question because it's kind of related to this. So the last question is about having a lot of kids and basically, you know, how many kids is it acceptable to have? And it's a bit of a weird question. I think in New Zealand there's some big families that China I know had big families in the past. Like maybe you could, I'm sure you know some people like your mum and dad's friends maybe who have really big families. In New Zealand, families are generally quite small, you know, two or three kids. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this? Like, should there be a limit on, you know, how many kids you can have? Because we're trying to convince people in China to have more. Well, not me and you, but there's a lot of talk of trying to convince people to have more kids in China, and in some other places, people are complaining about families that have too many kids. So on the opposite end, at the other extreme, having too many kids, you know, what are your thoughts about this situation? Should there be like a limit having too many babies?
嗯，我看过很多家庭，他们家里有4个孩子、5个孩子，然后家里面生活会比较乱一点，但是也有家里孩子很多，生活也很好的。我觉得是应该有一个限制，但是这个限制不是说我限制每一个人生几个孩子，这个限制应该是要看你的工资情况。我觉得就是在人们要生第二个孩子、第三个孩子的时候，就比如说，如果我们就是政府，他可以检查一下，哎，这个爸爸妈妈他们每个月工资够了，可以生2个孩子，可以养2个孩子，那没有问题，他们生。如果这个爸爸妈妈他们的收入很高，他们可以养4个孩子，那就让他们养，如果他们愿意。如果他们就是有那个钱可以照顾好这些孩子的话，那没有问题。但是如果这些爸爸妈妈他们自己钱还没有赚够，但是他们又想要很多孩子，那他们生下来给谁照顾呢？还不是要政府花钱照顾他们的孩子？所以我觉得就是要看每个爸爸妈妈的收入情况，然后去给他们一个限制会比较好。
All right, so a lovely, beautiful answer from Cherry, once again, as always. She said something along the lines of look at the salary, make sure someone has enough money to be able to have more kids and they're not doing it for some nefarious, bad reason, which I think is fine, you know. And if these people obviously don't have enough financial resources or people resources to help them, then yeah, they should probably be limited. So that is I think that's a really good answer to that question. So I give Cherry 10 points for that answer. Not that we're counting points or
谢谢，
anything.
谢谢。我是不是应该去做社会学家，而不是做中文老师？
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I was thinking that. I was thinking that in like the first question. I was like, Cherry knows what she's talking about here. This is good. I want to ask you one more question then. This is just off the cuff, straight off the hip. Your thoughts on the future of China's sort of population? You know, do you think it's going to be going up or going down or staying about the same? Like, does it matter? Um, you know, does China really need to have more people? Like, is it really a big deal? Like, should we even care that China is not having, you know, so many kids, so many babies, and the population's going down? Like, why is this in the newspapers, you know?
我这个问题很难，因为哦天呐，我不知道怎么回答。因为对我个人，对我自己而言，我觉得可能我们不需要那么多人，但是真的是对这个国家的经济而言的话，那是真的是需要的。因为一直以来在中国人口都非常多，它突然变少了以后，可能有一些经济，可能有一些发展就没有那么快，就是发展的没有那么快了。然后，人们的生活可能会慢慢的下降。我不知道以后会发生什么，但是我知道这个在中国是一个非常大的问题，而且如果人口的问题还不解决的话，它会影响很多人的，比如说退休工资，还有比如说我们的医疗保险、我们的保险，它会影响我们生活所有的东西，还有我们的退休的年龄。比如说，现在我爸爸60岁退休，可能到我要70岁才可以退休，所以它会影响很多东西，人口，不是只有人口问题，人口其实是我们的生活问题，所以我觉得这个是很大的问题。
And I'm just thinking, as well, I'm listening to you, I'm thinking probably two really big problems with the slowing down of the population would be labor, you know, getting workers to
Mm.
do, to continue, like you were talking about development just now, and the development's going to slow down. Construction, for example, is going to slow down because, you know, you're pulling workers, a lot of workers coming from smaller cities, countryside places, and you know these people were a lot more willing to work in this kind of fashion,
Mhm.
um, and you had a huge scale. Now that's going to change, yeah. So definitely the labor is one aspect that's you know China has and had a huge capacity for just building and making stuff. And as you have less people, yeah, obviously you're going to get a smaller labor. You're going to get a kind of maybe a labor shortage, but there's a lot of people also in China complaining that they can't find jobs as well. Um, Another thing I'm thinking is you have a aging population in China, so you have more old people, right? You have this thing they call this like the upside down pyramid. So China's population looks like this
Yes.
instead of like this. You know, we have young people on the bottom and the old people on the top. It's like this in China. So you have this aging population issue. I don't know if it's a problem. People say this is a
It
serious problem.
is.
It is a problem. Okay, it's a serious problem.
对
Um,
年轻人是很痛苦的，好吗？压力很大哎。
okay, so but do you have to understand something about Chinese culture to understand why that's a big problem? Because a lot of younger people have to look after their parents, right? Look after their grandparents. And if you had this one child policy
嗯哼。
for so long in the last since like the 1970s, I think, um, you have a lot of single children who have way too many parents and grandparents to have to look after. So there's an imbalance in the family unit in China. So those are two big problems I can think of: is the aging population issue and the labor shortage, which maybe will stop China from just building stuff, making stuff. But then at the same time, there's already problems. There's problems all around the world, and so some part of me thinks it's hard to say that this like a population decline in China isn't necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people are saying it's a bad thing, but is it really? Surely there's some benefits to having less people in China as well, right? If we look at the other side, the stress on the environment, no doubt, should go down, right? You have less people eating food, so you should probably have a bit more food, no?
嗯
I
哼，
mean,
我
I'm
同
not an
意。
economist. I don't know about these things. Maybe I shouldn't talk to it. Like, can you think of any benefits, Jerry, for having a smaller population or having a population declining?
这太容易了，第一个高考就不会压力那么大了，对不对？然
Mm,
后大家的竞争也不会那么大，可能比我年轻的人，他们找工作会更容易一点，然后会更容易找到比较高工资的工作，所以竞争对于他们来说竞争比较小了。
okay, so competition, the Gaokao, the high school entrance exam, university, postgraduate exams, finding a job. This is what Cherry's saying. It's going to be a lot. It should be easier. One would hope it's easier. And right now, if the population of China has reached a kind of its capacity, like its maximum level, then no doubt it is a difficult time to find jobs, and there is a lot of competition, and there are a lot of people, who are maybe struggling in different ways. But at the same time, China has gone through an incredible process where something like 80% of the population has been supposedly out of poverty lifted out of poverty. It's a huge achievement that probably in the 20th and 21st century, only a few things are sort of on the same level as what China has achieved with the kind of middle class, moving people into the cities and giving them all these benefits. Population, yeah, it's obviously an interesting issue. I don't know what kind of take I have on it, how I want things to go. Like, I do want there to be more Chinese people so that I can talk with more Chinese people in Chinese. It makes me feel like learning Chinese has more of a benefit if there's more. But there's already so many Chinese people, so it's like, how many people do I really need? And they're all around the world and they're everywhere. So this is good. Do you want to add anything to this? Like any thoughts?
其实关于中国的人口问题，我没有希望，我也没有不希望，因为我们都不知道。因为很多年以前有一个科学家他说，全世界的人口会在很多年以后到60亿，然后人口就嘣就爆了，然后我们没有吃的东西，也没有用的东西。但是后来发现，哎，他的那个想法好像是错的，因为 人口好像到了现在已经开始慢慢的往下降，不会到这个 top 了，已经往下降了。所以我觉得，嗯，就看它会发生什么，然后自己准备好就可以了。
All right. Well, that's probably more than enough on this population shrinkage issue in China. So I think we can probably sign
嗯
off,
哼
get out of here.
，OK，好，行，那就聊到这里。
Thanks, Cherry.
嗯，不客气。